a U.S. bomb found a power substation sitting a stone's throw away from Iran's only operating nuclear power plant. And for about 2 hours plus, an Iranian location is sat in the dark while CENTCOM finished its 11th straight night of absolutely bombarding Iran. This video right here posted by CENTCOM showing F-18s blasting off of the carrier, striking down new Iranian targets across the country. The gloves totally coming off at this point. Full-blown absolute mayhem on the table, with the U.S. saying that potentially the U.S. and Israel might just completely decimate Iran. And we've yet to see that. So if this is what we're seeing isn't complete warfare, what could come next? Well, striking this nuclear power plant or striking near it is the biggest sign yet that the Trump administration is sending to the mullahs. Listen to this. President Trump posted this on Truth Social just an hour ago. He said, from this point forward, anytime the Islamic Republic of Iran shoots at a ship in the Strait of Hormuz, whether it be by missile, rocket, drone, or any other device or weapon, the United States will bomb and destroy one bridge or power plant, including those located next to or in the capital city of Tehran. And remember, the capital city of Tehran, that's the stronghold where all the leadership is. That's basically where they've all retreated to. He said, thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. So he's basically showing the mullahs that, hey, you care about Tehran. That's your last fiefdom. That's your big stronghold for the actual political leaders. We're talking like Ghalibaf, Pezeshkian, those that are the mouthpieces of the IRGC, mouthpieces of the Ayatollah, with rumors that the Ayatollah has actually been flown out of the country. The new Ayatollah, Majid Khamenei, the cardboard cutout. The cardboard cutout strikes again, but this time he's basically getting on a cargo plane and flying out of the country, potentially. More to come on that on future videos. But then the IRGC spoke up with their massive level of rhetoric, and they said, if America occupies our territory, we will even bomb our own territory. Are we surprised? Because meanwhile, while all these strikes were going on, Iran still found time to execute protesters all the way back to the January protests. So they're getting absolutely bombarded. Their nuclear facilities are getting hit just outside the perimeter. And they're like, yeah, we know that's all going on, but we're going to take some time to execute some protesters. So it kind of tells you everything you need to know about this regime itself, right? They're willing to bomb their own territory. They're willing to eliminate their own people to protect their actual seat of power. And the guy that said that was Brigadier General Mohammad Al-Khamenei, Iranian army spokesperson, said that on Iranian state television. So we've got the Hornet blasting off of the carrier. This mission going on right now, striking just outside, striking the power substations of the power plant itself. And then stay for the global roundup section today, because we've got some wild things to cover. There was actually a man-pads alert at LaGuardia Airport in New York. Just wild to think about. But from a terrorism perspective, that might be the number one thing that they try to focus on, would be man-pads, which are those shoulder-fired missiles. And I'll get into what that means, what's going on behind the scenes to prevent some tragedy from happening with some terrorist being able to sneak in one of these things. So we'll talk about all of that in the global roundup section. That's about 3/4 of the way through the video. But the story tonight, it isn't necessarily night 11 of strikes. It's how close America is willing to get and touch that nuclear power plant, and how far Iran is willing to go to try to protect themselves. Because we're seeing a full escalation happening now, with President Trump saying every time you strike one of these tankers, well, a power plant or a bridge gets blown up. But let's rewind just a little bit so we have a little bit of context here about what the F-18s are doing and what systems could be teaming up with those F-18s. Advanced military tech, that's all coming up. But before we get to that, could an F-15 actually beat a drone that pulls 15 Gs? Well, I ran the numbers, I thought through this dogfight, and it's not exactly what you think. A human maxes out at around 9 Gs before you black out. And in the dogfights that I've flown, when you're pulling 9 Gs, everything gets a lot darker. Your vision starts to come in. The G loss of consciousness could happen. This is a thing that fighter pilots have to fight against, but not necessarily the drones. So I broke this whole thing down on my school platform. It's skool.com/maxafterburner. If you go there right now, you can see a full course where I talk about a fighter pilot going up against a drone. And I've got other courses on there as well. Everything from leadership, entrepreneurship, to things that you won't hear in the mainstream news or even on my channel about the Iranian regime, including details on their shadow fleet. I've also got some personal stories in there where I'll recount some of my missions during combat and pull out some lessons that we can all learn from. So pop over to skool.com/maxafterburner, join my exclusive community. You get a 7-day free trial. There's no risk. So pop in. I'll see you over on the Skool platform. Click that link in the description. But if we rewind about 14 hours, late Tuesday, Iran made clear the ceasefire was over in everything but name. Drones, missiles aimed at U.S. and allied positions in Kuwait, Bahrain, Jordan, plus another hit on a transiting vessel in the Strait of Hormuz. They've already maimed or eliminated 12 mariners, and they just hit another one yesterday. Kuwait's own military confirmed it was working through incoming fire in real time with this quote, "Kuwaiti air defenses are currently confronting hostile missile and drone attacks." That was from Kuwait's armed forces statement reported by the New Arab newspaper. Jordan's air defenses moved next, intercepting 8 of 10 incoming projectiles from the Iranian regime, 6 missiles and 4 drones, with the 2 that got through landing in open ground, no damage or casualties reported. Bahrain's interior ministry reported sirens sounding for a second time as Iranian drones targeted the country's air navigation systems. Traffic wasn't affected. CENTCOM answered all of that in the same night with its 11th consecutive evening of these strikes taking place right here. And when we look at the actual strike package on what's being hit, looks like the F-18 is at the forefront of these strikes right now. That's the F-18E. That's the single seat model. The F-18F is the dual seat model with a Rio in the back seat, blasting off of the carrier. Nighttime operations. Hats off to these sailors making this happen. And then those looked like rockets being absolutely crushed. So, oh cool, Iran, you're gonna have your little rockets sitting out in the open. Good luck keeping those in your stockpile. And then you've got a truck, likely a radar dish on the top of that truck, could be launching drones, little mobile command center, also rockets, a potential as well. With those things being mobile, well, not anymore. Obviously that thing is vaporized now. But ultimately those things being mobile likely gives Iran the potential to strike ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Just move this thing around. We've looked at some of the bunkers during the live streams that I've done where you can see there's basically parts of the ground that just open up. These things can drive out, launch their rockets towards ships in the Strait of Hormuz with some sort of targeting solution that's come through maybe just some helping hands of Uncle China, Uncle Xi Jinping, providing some updated targeting coordinates. Potentially, we know that some of the firms in China that operate satellites have been reported as giving updated targeting data to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So plugging that in to a truck like this gives them the ability to harass those ships. So that's why in not so uncertain terms, CENTCOM's like, hey, hold my JDAM, watch this. Hey, hold this, my dude. Give the Islamic Republic regime that is occupying Iran, where the free people of Iran want to be outside of that vice, give them no quarter, give them no place to hide. Military operations centers, maritime capabilities, aircraft hangars, drone storage facilities, that's what CENTCOM is absolutely crushing right now. And then buried in that target list, the power substation outside of Bandar Bushehr, close enough to Iran's own operating nuclear power plant that obviously this makes the regime panic. Iranian sources also reported strikes near Kuba Range and fires in Bahrain the same night. Restoration crews near Bushehr had the lights back on in a matter of hours, but the message here was absolutely clear. You mess around and you're going to find out. That's the sequence. Now here's why the substation part is worth stopping on and why the platforms flying overhead matter just as much as the targeting list. So this is the strike package doing exactly what strike packages are built to do. Degrade command and control, maritime strike capability, and logistics in that order. Night after night, 11 nights, without touching the reactor that everyone's actually worried about in Bushehr, but sending the message very clearly. This is the second time that one of these transformer units outside of the complex has been hit. This is the battlefield commanders showing the Iranian regime that once you hit ships, all of your targets are on the table. Even with a couple days ago, Tabriz, they posted a video of their underground drone storage, and then the next morning it was up in flames, with sources recording that strike, showing the Iranian regime that everything is on the table now. So now there's revenge on the table. So if Iran hits and names U.S. forces or causes casualties, the Trump administration is saying they are going to get hit 20 times as hard, with President Trump saying that he's instructed Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to strike back 20 times as hard. if U.S. forces are targeted. But how are these F-18s doing it? How could they be the most effective? Well, here's what I think about now when especially it comes to fourth generation fighters. So I flew the F-15E. It took me a few minutes here to tell you I was a pilot. I'm getting better. My ego is getting a little bit better. But at the end of the day, it comes down to how these fourth generation fighters can team up with CCAs, Combat Collaborative Aircraft. And the one I want to highlight today is Shield AI. It's got hive mind autonomy software, which is designed to let the aircraft operate in contested, GPS jammed or denied environments, which is exactly what Iran is doing right now, without needing constant contact with a human controller. Exactly the kind of electronic warfare environment that Iran is trying to create right now in the Gulf. So the concept is a manned-unmanned teaming. The Super Hornet crew acts as the mission commander, while XBAT, or a flight of them, pushes forward in the most contested airspace first, running the strike, reconnaissance, or electronic warfare, while the human aircraft stays back at a safer standoff range. Shield AI says the aircraft is priced to run around $27 million a unit, cheap enough that commanders can risk it on the missions that nobody wants to risk a $80 million F-18 or $100 million F-15E Strike Eagle. So the analysis here, we don't know for sure if the XBAT is in the Gulf, but if it was, it would be able to go out in front of these fourth generation fighters, pass AI targeting solutions to the F-18s. This isn't science fiction. This is the actual design intent behind the program. And the Gulf, to me, is the closest to the exact environment that it was built for that we've seen in all of warfare. So is it actually running missions yet in the theater? Not confirmed yet, but once it does, it will definitely be what's called a force multiplier. But now let's talk about what it's going up against, right? The honest picture of what Iran has. Iranian officials have pushed the rhetoric past straight denial into open threats against Kuwait specifically. Separate reporting has cited that Iranian officials are threatening a full-scale ground push into Kuwait and the seizure of American personnel there, right? They're claiming that. Now, you can't discount the enemy, but the structural problem for Iran is geography. Iran shares no land border with Kuwait itself, so any real ground option would have to route through southern Iraq, a move that U.S. ISR assets would almost certainly spot well before it became a crossing. But I'm seeing videos of people posting online saying that the IRGC is preparing for a full-scale invasion of Kuwait. That's the reports we're seeing, with them posting videos of tanks and other equipment moving towards that Iraqi border that is right next to Kuwait. So if Tehran tried it, the American counter is already built into the map. Roughly 13,500 or more U.S. personnel are already based in Kuwait, concentrated in specific areas that Iran says they're going to take, but these forces are ready to rock and roll. They know that this would be Iran's biggest propaganda victory ever, and so teaming them up with air power, with PRISM missiles, those ground-launched missiles from the U.S. Army, going in and crushing any Iranian advancement. I mean, it would basically be like the British, where they line up and they're like, okay, it's our turn to fire at you. Now you need to receive our fire. The U.S. military would be like, no, we're good. We'll go ahead and let you guys come out in the open as you try this invasion, and we'll just crush you from above with F-15E Strike Eagles, PRISM missiles, probably technology that hasn't even been released before would be unleashed on those Iranian hordes if they tried to come across the desert like that. So hopefully they try it, probably is what most of the soldiers are saying right now. If they do try it, it's going to be an absolute massacre. But we talked about it before as well. While the Iranian regime is planning this supposed invasion of Kuwait, they're also taking the time to execute an 18-year-old and a 23-year-old that were convicted in a mass trial that gave 12 defendants a total of 1 hour court time between all of them to talk about their positions. It's almost like they had already decided to execute these young people prior to the trial even taking place. Oh, we're really shocked. Iran's like, yeah, we're going to give you the opportunity to stand up for yourself, but don't mind the fact that we already have a big whiteboard that says guilty behind you. We're still deciding, and we're a very unbiased court here in Iran. This isn't a side note. This is the actual regime that CENTCOM is degrading every single night, and they're getting more and more nervous. This is a government that has to execute its own protesters to hold the streets at home, and it's not a government negotiating from strength in the Gulf. No matter how loud the rhetoric about Kuwait gets, they are not negotiating negotiating from a position of strength. They are just concerned about protecting their fiefdom, which again is why President Trump is mentioning taking out the power plants that power Tehran, because that's their last fiefdom, that's their stronghold. All right, you get to the global roundup section, my friends. So we're going to talk about what's going on right now. It looks like Russia is launching Zircon hypersonic missiles. That's their goal, with now Ukraine countering those. So Ukraine is countering those by potentially getting the license to build missiles that can strike them down, like the Patriot missile. So they're going to be building their own, but the problem is it could take up to 2 years to get their supply lines fully up and going. And then second, a scare that's much closer to home, air traffic control at LaGuardia issued a man-pads alert overnight. BHS strategic analysis section. So here's a piece nobody is connecting right now. Iran's stated goal is straight control of the Strait of Hormuz and sanctions relief, but what it actually wants is a way to look like it's winning at home while it's losing at sea right now. It's losing in the Strait of Hormuz. It's absolutely getting crushed, which is exactly why executions and inflammatory state TV rhetoric are climbing at the same time its military capability is falling. The U.S. holds the stronger hand here to actually bring them to the table, or hopefully actually create some sort of an insurgency within the country while all this is happening, and allow that insurgency to take over a town and start to grow. What do you think happens? Do you think that we see that insurgency actually have the ability to grow into Iran? What do you think the message was with taking out the power plant itself?